Hey, what's up, Colleen? How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good,
Thanks for
good.
having me.
Of course, yeah. And we're actually live
In person.
in person,
Yeah.
So, pleasure to hang out. So, I've actually, I remember, I don't know how I came across you in the CrossFit world back in the day, but I remember seeing some of your, I guess, performances, so to speak, at the games and at regionals and stuff. So it's big fan.
Thank you.
I think we ran into each other at the DBT meetup a few months ago, and
small world
for sure. I think when I autographed my book, I wrote that I need your autograph actually. So anyway, pleasure to be hanging out with you. So for people who don't know who you are, do you want to give a quick intro?
Yeah, for sure. So I currently work as a data analyst and former competitive athlete in swimming, CrossFit, and bobsledding. And I just moved to Utah like 3 weeks ago.
Good choice.
So yeah. Loving the choice so far. And yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, let's walk through it. I think the theme of this, and I think what would be interesting to talk about is your journey from being an athlete to working as a data analyst. That's not the most obvious career path. And when I saw you at the meetup, I was like, wait, really? She's here?
Yeah.
You're gonna have like a
Did she walk into the wrong room?
Yeah, it's like the CrossFit Games is the other place in the building there, but it's really cool. I mean, walk me through this. I mean, so you've been an athlete most of your life, right? So
so grew up playing pretty much, I feel like, every sport, and then swimming was the one that stuck, and so started doing that, solely swimming. I would say beginning of high school, so the brutal double days and 4:45 on deck at the pool workouts. I mean, there were definitely times where I would say I didn't enjoy it a ton, but overall really liked it, and led me to do a lot of things that I never in a million years could have dreamed that I would get to do, like qualifying for Olympic trials and winning a NCAA championship. And so that was pretty awesome. Did that, and then thought I was done competing in all athletics, and really wanted to be a D1 strength and conditioning coach. So I interned at Berkeley, where I went to college, and a few years later got a job coaching there. Did that, which was incredible. And then while I was there, got introduced to CrossFit.
Whoa.
And so I was in Berkeley, and a friend of mine invited me to regionals back when it was NorCal and SoCal, and I think it was in Santa Rosa at the time. It was outdoors. And
what year was this?
2013, I want to say.
Okay.
Yeah. And I was just in awe of everyone competing, and especially just the women, the weight they were moving and stuff, and the stuff they were doing on rings. I was like, this is wild.
Who were some of the top women back then? I'm trying to remember.
I do remember Annie Sakamoto was competing at the time. Yeah. And then that was the year Sam Briggs won.
I was gonna say Sam Briggs was
Lindsay Valenzuela, Val Vobrel. Yeah. So that was quite the crew. Major OGs. Yeah. CrossFit royalty. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. But so then my friend and I signed up for a CrossFit gym the following day in San Francisco, and I was absolutely hooked. And it's funny too, that actually wasn't my first time ever trying CrossFit. Oh, that's okay.
The joys of recording live.
Yeah. But I had tried a class, and I think it was just, there were kipping pull-ups, double unders, and something else, all stuff that takes quite a bit to learn, when you're first getting into CrossFit. So I'm not going to lie, I didn't have the best time, and I was like, maybe CrossFit's not for me. And then after going to this competition, not that I necessarily thought I was going to compete in it, but I just loved the community aspect. Mm-hmm. And that was definitely something I missed from collegiate sports, was getting to show up and kind of suffer together in a way.
Wait, which gym was this again that you went? Was it?
So this was United Barbell in San Francisco.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why do I feel like I've heard of them before? Are they popular for anything in particular?
Barbell.
Anyway.
Yeah.
anything with barbell at the end though, you
yeah,
like, oh yeah, that's like a legit gym, and you think it's in Ohio, like
right,
like West Side or something. So
but yeah, awesome community, and we were right near the AT&T Stadium, the Giants Stadium. Really cool spot. But yeah,
that's really cool.
Yeah, so that was kind of my first introduction, and I definitely drank the Kool-Aid hard, and I was just all in.
Well, I mean, back then too, I think it was easy because CrossFit was becoming like the cool thing.
For sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Like I remember working out in like even 2008, I think, or 9, like the main site workouts. I don't know. One of my friends was like, hey, you should try these out. And I'm like, these things are horrible.
Yeah.
Right. But that was back, I think, because the games, I think, started, in 2009 or something like that?
I think it was 7 or 8.
7 or 8. Okay. Yeah. Old school. And, but you fast forward to, 2012, 2013, around the time you're describing, and it's like there's official like gyms, they call them boxes, but same thing. Right. And it seemed like it's definitely reaching like a crescendo at that time.
Definitely.
So,
yeah,
like a lot of people in that. That's interesting. So you've been like a competitive athlete up to this point. How, but in a lot of cases, like you're on a team, you're getting coaching, you're showing up at 4:40 in the morning, like on deck, right? And now you're having to do CrossFit. Like walk me through that progression of like, being on a team. Do you think swimming's a team sport though, or is it not a team sport?
It is. I would say it is. You definitely, I mean, for me, relays were my favorite part of, and not that relays aren't all encompassing. There's only a few. But I would say even when, at least from my experience, when I'm going up to the blocks for an individual race, it never felt like I was truly by myself. And I think that was because the culture of the team was very much that no individual is bigger than the whole.
Right.
And that's what I loved. Like, that's what I thrived on, and probably why I liked relays the absolute most. If I could do just relays, I honestly would. Not that I didn't like competing alone, but I just loved the team camaraderie. And I think, like you said, swimming's a brutal sport, especially the training for it and the timing and all that stuff. But I think that's the cool part about it, is that sometimes when you don't want to, push through a workout or anything like that for yourself, you can look to the right and left of you and be like, okay, I'm doing it for them.
Right.
And that's what I really, really like. So
how do you think that translated over to CrossFit when you got into it then?
So I am very competitive, and
I couldn't tell at all.
Yeah. So what I really liked was when I showed up to CrossFit, there was, a whiteboard, and it would have everyone's name for every class that had gone on that day so far and their score for the workout. And I loved going in and being like, okay, what's the best time? What's the best score?
I do that all the time beat too.
That. Yeah. Yeah. And it's just, I love that, just getting to fixate on that versus going into the gym and being like, well, I'm here because I, want my body to look this way, or I'm lifting to get it was just, I wasn't fixated on that. I was just kind of like in the moment, either trying to learn a new skill or I'm trying to beat the person next to me, which I really liked, and kind of scratched that competitive itch that I just inherently have. So, yeah.
But as far as the team aspect goes, though, right?
Yeah.
So in swimming, it was all about the team. But in CrossFit, right? So you have your the people you train with a lot, like your crew, whether it's a morning crew or the afternoon crew or evening crew or whatever. Like, I was always the afternoon crew. My wife, she's the morning crew, but we always kind of have this competitiveness with the different times of day for some reason. I don't know why, but
that is so true.
But it's like, But then as far as like pushing yourself, do you think that did you view it as more of a kind of like, I'm doing this for, my gym, or am I doing this for myself? Like, I'm trying to get into that switch, because at CrossFit, especially if you compete as an individual or train as an individual, like you're obviously an individual.
Yeah,
like,
totally.
So, I don't know.
Yeah, I would definitely say it was a shift, because I would say it's definitely more individual than, swimming an individual race on a collegiate team. But to your point, I do think the boxes they're like a team in and of themselves, the community, because it really does take a village. All the people that show up at, even today, like a semifinals, quarterfinals, the games, like they have a box and coaches and friends and family that are all helping them and pushing them to, do their thing. And so I think as an individual, you definitely represent all the people that help you get to that point, allow you to do that. I would say though, I mean, and during my CrossFit career, I did have the opportunity to compete on a team, which was so cool. And that was definitely reminded me more of the collegiate swimming side where, I mean, you are on a team, so it makes sense that it would be
It makes sense. Yeah, but it was like 6 people though, right? With a couple alternates. Like, so I used to train at Ute for the audience, which is like back, it was like 2012, 2013, they won the games back to back. And then like Tommy Hackenbrook, the lead of Ute, I think individually even like killed it at the games a few times. Like, yeah. Very dominant. Gym. Yeah, he was the G back in the day. But yeah, so I'd see these guys training a ton, right? So my first coaches was Mike Cashew and Jake Hutton.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know those dudes.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jake's like, I think they called him the Vanilla Gorilla. The dude is like massive. His Instagram of him lifting, like he was doing like back lunges at like 405 or something crazy that. Easily.
Dang.
Overhead, just the overhead like walking lunge at like 315 or something. The guy's a beast. But so that was my first coach there, and these guys were. I think Jake ended up. So Mike ended up doing brute strength. And brute and all that fun stuff. And then who was it? Jake went on to do. Because you won again in what was it 2016? I think it was at the games for team. We got third or something, and then the Wasatch Brute won the next year. But anyway,
that's right.
So I'd watch these guys train though, and I'm like, holy crap! Like I've never seen anything like this. Like I in my own little way, I've done in competitive sports, but nothing like that. Where these guys are just like really pushing it. And so you definitely can appreciate the team aspect. I mean, when you were on the team, first, what team are you on, and then walk me through that dynamic of just like training and how it compared to being an individual going to the games.
Yeah, so I was on the NorCal CrossFit team.
It's a legit team.
Yeah, so Jason Kalipa's gym, and was on the team with one of my best friends still to this day, Molly Volmer, who she was, when I was getting into CrossFit, I mean, I still look up to her, but I remember competing against her and just being in awe, and it's pretty wild that we became best friends. But so I competed on NorCal CrossFit, and so in the 2016 season, I missed out on the games by a few points, which was
that's tragic,
brutal. And I had a nagging shoulder injury that I had had for years from swimming, but it wasn't bad enough where I thought something was really wrong, but felt like I should get an MRI just for peace of mind. And turns out there was actually something wrong. So basically had a talk with the doctor. They're like, hey, if you don't plan on doing any of this stuff or want to lift and whatnot, I mean, you can let it be, but it's not going to be great. So I was like, well, I want to keep doing this, so I'm going to get surgery. So knew that going individual the following season, 2017, just wasn't, there was no way I could go individual. And not that team is by any means easier, but
it's just different.
Yeah, exactly. Just different. And I'm so thankful, honestly, through that whole process, because NorCal was putting together a team, and I'm so thankful for that team, because honestly, I mean, coming back from any injury is not fun, and especially the mental piece of it. And it was so helpful having those other 5 people that on the days that I had enough with my rehab or anything like that, and I just didn't want to do it, but I knew what I was doing it for. And going to the games with them was just incredible, and getting to win regionals and stuff like that. And some of the hardest workouts to this day was with the worm. So it's that long sandbag that you're all lifting together.
Yeah, that thing sucks.
Oh, it's horrible. Well, and that's the thing with the team. It's such a different shift from individual. While it's sometimes you're taking on a lot more volume as an individual, but when you're on a team, if I am feeling gas and I need a break, I don't really just get to be like, hey, I'm tapping out for a second. Like, you have to be in tune with everyone else to make sure, okay, no, this is when we're breaking. So sometimes you end up pushing yourselves to limits far beyond what you thought you were capable of, because you have to. Yeah. Because you don't get to stop whenever you want. So that was really cool. So I feel like I got that much fitter through that season training with the team.
That's super cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. How'd you guys do that year?
We got 4th.
Okay.
Which I shouldn't say like, we got, but when you're that close to the podium. 17.
Okay. That wasn't the year the Wasatch Brutes.
That was the year they won. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, for the audience, the brutes were the evolution of the Ute gym here in Salt Lake City. And so they trained a bit north of here. But those guys, I mean, I was watching them train, and it was crazy how much, and the thing is too, I think the head coach at the time, or the head of the team, Adrian Conway, like, oh yeah, he I don't know, he just has really good leadership skills. It was cool, and that really came through in the how they performed, because it was like everything was in sync, like everyone was like just on it. I don't know what happened, but it clicked. So, well,
that's the thing too. You have to have such good communication skills, and sometimes without actually communicating either, because that's you're not only, you can barely breathe and you're tired and stuff, but you're also having to pay attention to everyone around you, or the person that's yelling out, to stop when you need to stop, or, to go when you need to go, stuff like that. So it definitely takes on a lot of different elements.
When you're competing at the games in team, how often are you looking at, or even individually, how often are you looking at the person next to you, or the leaderboard to see like how the scores are?
I would say very rarely. I mean, when I was competing on a team, we had at least one person for every workout that was dictating, like with the worm, for example, that you're all holding like this giant sandbag you have on your shoulders, and you'd have to progress it forward through the workout, and the person in front's the one dictating, like, hey, we got to stop. So you're always paying attention to them. Also, the more you're in sync with that, the easier and more efficient it will feel. So you're always paying attention to the person in front of you, just to make sure your cadence is matching up. As far as individually, there's very few times where I'm really looking around, I would say. I do remember in 2018 at regionals, I remember there was one workout where I was in the lead I got to win a regional workout, which was really cool on my own. And that's cool. I remember like looking over, I remember my parents were freaking out. They were like, why is she looking over? She needs to focus on what she's doing. And I was focusing, but I would say for the most part, there are blinders on. But I would say sometimes, like another event at that regionals, I remember I was neck and neck with another girl, and there were these really heavy overhead dumbbell lunges. And we were kind of paying attention to each other, where it's like, well, I'm not going to pick it up until she picks it up, kind of a thing. So you're feeding off each other a bit, but I would say for the most part, you have your blinders on a bit, because you also don't want to, everyone has a strategy based on their strengths and weaknesses, and you don't want to go out too hot, because you're trying to catch someone and then you blow up at the end of a workout and stuff like that. So it's good to know where you're at, but primarily stay within yourself and know that you have to run your own race.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's interesting. And then from CrossFit, you didn't stop there. So
no,
you went to, another sport. So.
Yeah. So I, after the 2020 season, I got recruited to try out for the US National Bobsled Team.
Okay.
Which
sounds a lot like CrossFit and swimming.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I was kind of, at first I was like, well, I had no idea how people got into bobsledding. And
how do you get into bobsledding? I've always been curious.
So I think a lot of it is through word of mouth. I think people know someone who did it or tried out and did a combine
or something.
Like secret code, knock twice. No. Well, and I think too, it's probably more prevalent in sports like track, for example. Especially a lot of women will go from track into, or even volleyball, stuff like that. And that's, so for the most part, the women I had seen in it were track athletes who got into it. And so I think I would say I'm like the opposite of a track athlete. I mean, I was in a pool most of my life, and then I spent many years in CrossFit learning how to just keep running for a 5K. You know what I mean? So
yeah, I was going to ask you, I should have asked you before, do you consider yourself more of a kind of anaerobic or aerobic athlete, or strength or power? Like, what's your...
I would say first strength and power, but I think I didn't realize how aerobic I was until I got into CrossFit, and how much of an aerobic base I got from swimming. Even being a sprinter in swimming, I had a really good foundation, just because I did a lot of hypoxic work and stuff, and our practices in general. I mean, I was a sprinter, but that doesn't mean that, in the off season you're building that base. So I did a lot of long, brutal workouts that challenge me aerobically. And so that definitely helped. But I would say for the most part, the strength side of things comes to me a lot easier than the aerobic side. Yeah.
Before what you did in the bobsled, then, I mean, that seemed to translate over.
Yeah. So it's for the initial, so that was the thing. They were looking for powerful athletes that were strong. You know, because I was a brakeman, so I was the one, I was not driving, which is for the best. But I was in the back helping the sled get up to top speed as soon as possible.
Okay.
So essentially you've got like 15 to 20 meters to just start sprinting with the sled and then continue that speed as you're jumping into the sled.
How many people are in the bobsled?
2.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was definitely a new thing that I had to learn, was how to run properly and proper sprinting mechanics. Really? Yeah. Cause I had never learned how to, again, it was a lot of my running training in CrossFit was, 5K work, having to run for a few miles and then go do a clean and jerk or something like that, and we did some sprinting, but it was such a small piece of the programming that there wasn't a lot of training centered around that.
How do you train to become a brakeman then?
So I would say it's a lot of sprinting work. So dialing in.
So what kind of sprints? Like what distance are you talking about?
Like 20, 30 meters or so. Yeah. Not very long at all.
Like a sled on you or something
so honestly, a lot of the off-season stuff, you're just purely sprinting, not with a sled.
Okay.
And then you'll also start to, as you get closer to in-season stuff, working with just like a regular prowler sled. There are some sleds that, like the pilot that recruited me, she had one made that mimicked a bobsled, essentially. Not the full bobsled, but just like where the handles were and everything, just so she could practice a lot better, which was really cool. But then both in Park City and New York, which is where the 2 tracks in the US are, they have a track. So you can practice just the initial push and sprint without actually having to go onto the ice, which is really cool. So
probably prevents injury too.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, was it scary your first time going down a bobsled? Okay.
Yes.
That seems terrifying.
Yeah. So that was the thing going into, so I went out to New York and we trained for maybe a week or 2. And then the track was ready, the ice was ready and all that stuff. So we got to go down it. And basically the first day they just told me, just whatever you do, get in the sled. They were like, we don't care how fast you push it, what it looks like, just make sure you get in the sled.
What happens if you don't?
If you don't, it really sucks for your pilot because it's a lot harder to drive it down because you don't have the weight keeping it down in the back. So the back kind of fishtails.
Yeah.
And you're supposed to be in charge of the brakes. So when they get to the bottom, they're going to have to figure out like how to scooch back and pull on the brakes. So it's all bad. So they were like, we don't care if you take 2 steps and then get in. Like, just get in.
How does it work in the opposite though? So if a brakeman gets in, but the pilot doesn't get in, is that okay?
Oh, no. I don't know if maybe that's happened, but I don't know what would happen.
Are they in it already and you're just pushing it?
So you start initially both out of the sled, and then you start pushing the sled at the same time, and then the pilot will get in like a second before the brakeman does. So the pilot gets in, and then the brakeman takes like 2 to 3 more steps, and then you're in. Okay,
I just want to make sure it wasn't like, hey, just kidding.
Oh yeah,
have fun, or something, right? Like
that would be horrible.
Yeah, so. When you trained, was your pilot experienced or were you both new?
So
that helps.
I was very fortunate that the entire US team when I was there, amazing pilots, very seasoned. And the pilot that I went with my first time, Kaylee Humphreys, multiple gold medals. Dang. Very, very good. So I felt very safe. I was like, I'm good. My life is in your hands and I feel good about this. And I remember... Because when you're a brakeman, it's good to know, how many turns there are in the track and everything like that. And I, given it was my first time, I had no idea where I was in the track as we were going down. But I knew in general that it was going to take around 50-ish or a minute. So I was just counting in my head and waiting for it to be over because I had no idea where I was.
What comes to mind is like water slides, like the ones with the tubes. I don't know. Did that your first time? Did it feel like something like that, or was it just?
No, it's a lot. It's not nearly as gentle. So basically, you're in like a metal container, and you're kind of getting pushed around, and there's also a lot of like G-force getting like so you're getting like smushed in half, which is good. You want to stay as low as possible, but it's pretty wild. You're just kind of there's no seat belts, no like anything like that. So you're just holding on to the frame of the bobsled.
Who thought of this sport?
I know, it's very interesting. Well, and it's wild too. In Lake Placid, they still have the old track that was there years and years and years ago. And you look at the bobsled and how it's progressed and everything. It's pretty wild what it used to be like.
What was it like back in the day?
Just way more minimal. And I would say the tracks were... like it looked like you could kind of just like pop out of them at any time. It was like I don't know exactly how they were made, but
is there like a mural like to all the fallen bobsled people?
No, I don't think so.
Just like, that would be very grim if you went to the Olympic training facility and you're like, hey.
Yeah, I might second guess. Yeah, my decision.
Yeah, that's interesting. Did you train up in Park City then?
Yeah, so I got to compete there and train there. That was a lot of fun. That was my first and only crash I had in Park City. So that was pretty wild to experience.
What was that like?
So it was pretty much like because they run you through a protocol they have to for safety reasons. Like, hey, here's what you do. If you crash, here's what it's going to feel like. And so they did say that something won't feel quite right. And given that I was still so new, I didn't really know it feels pretty violent altogether. So you don't really know. You're like, was that supposed to feel like that? I'm not quite sure.
Yeah.
And it goes really quiet for a split second. And then all of a sudden your head's on the ice. So,
whoa.
Yeah. So I remember, all of a sudden and you don't go fully upside down. You're just on your side.
Okay.
But yeah, so my helmet was just sliding on the ice for a bit and I was just hanging on for
Was your helmet on
life.
you?
Yeah. Yeah. Thank God for helmets. So, and it's interesting too, because every track starts to go up a little bit through the finish line. And so we crashed and we went through the finish line, which was good because we were trying to qualify for a race. And because I stayed in the sled, we qualified, so that was good. Our time counted.
Good job.
Yeah, thanks. So because it goes up at the end, you start sliding back down. And so we slid back down and we kind of went back and forth for
like
a
one
bit.
Of those like Looney Tunes cartoons?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then eventually there's people like manning the track. They'll stop it so you can get out. And then you get checked by medics and all that to make sure you're okay.
Were you okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so it was just, my adrenaline was at an all-time high.
I could imagine.
Later that night, I just crashed. It was wild. But, so that was quite an experience. Yeah.
Yeah, I always wondered about, it looks like the craziest sport of most of the snow sports. And we're in Utah, right? So it's like the Olympic team trains here.
Yeah.
There's like countless snow sports.
Right.
Park City's got, the Olympic jump, and we have the oval here, which has all the indoor stuff. And yeah, I think the college down the street from me, Westminster, they have more Olympians, I think, than any other school in the world, maybe.
Oh, wow.
Because you can get a free scholarship there if you're on the ski team.
Nice.
Yeah, so it's like,
very
why
cool.
not? Yeah, so
yeah.
It's like everyone here is on the ski team. Except for me for some reason. But yeah, that's cool. Dang, that's interesting. So but you got on the national team. You're about to go to the Olympics or travel to the Olympics.
Yeah, that was the goal, was to try out and potentially qualify for the Olympics in the 2022 season.
Okay.
And so probably a month out from going back to Lake Placid to start training and then start the qualification process, I tore my ACL.
Oh,
so that was brutal. Was hoping that it was something that I could, somehow get back to in a few months, but got an MRI and it was fully torn. And so it was pretty wild. I thought I had the rest of the year planned out to a T, and then, just kind of got turned on its head a little bit. So
what was that like mentally?
It was hard. It was interesting because I remember, so I tore it. I wasn't, on a bobsled track. I was lifting, and
it's always something like that, right?
Which is almost more annoying. I kind of wish it was specific to bobsledding, because I could kind of in my head rationalize that a bit more.
Yeah.
Because with lifting, it's something, I was re-racking a push jerk, something I've done hundreds.
Wait, re-racking it?
Yeah. So I was doing a double or triple.
Yeah. Went
overhead, brought it back down, and my knee just kind of gave. And it was such a fluke, weird thing. And just so it's more annoying because it's something I've done.
I don't know what it is about push jerks too, because I knocked one of my teeth.
Oh geez!
From push jerking up, and it hit my chin, and then and I was like, oh god, Just avoid those lifts
I know.
there.
Well, and it's sad because I love push jerks. So I was like, how could they do this to me?
Right? But, that's crazy. I guess it is a lot of load though.
Yeah.
On your knee. So
totally. Yeah. So it was really weird. And I remember in that instant kind of seeing that dream or Olympic dream kind of like flashing. Not that it was by any means guaranteed. I was going up against a bunch of amazing athletes who had been doing it forever.
What is that whole selection process like? So you're trying out for the Olympic team.
Yeah.
How many people are you against, and like what happens?
So it kind of depends on the year, but I want to say that season there were probably around 15 to 18 women trying out for it. And then, so there's alternates as well, but essentially there's a combine where, so there's a whole committee that kind of makes this selection. And then they also take into account, obviously, the coach's feedback, the pilot's feedback, teammates' feedback. And the committee is made up of former athletes as well. And so it's, so they still have a season going into the Olympics. And so they use a lot of that season to take into account who should be in the sleds at the Olympics. And yeah.
Okay. So not a lot of people. I mean, do you feel like you actually had a good chance of getting in if you hadn't blown out your knee?
I definitely, so it's hard to say. I definitely felt like, so from because I learned so much about what I needed to do and what were my weaknesses in the sport after the first season. So I sought out a coach who had been a bobsledder himself, and he now works with a lot of NFL athletes and was super, super knowledgeable about because I was like, I know very little about bobsledding still. I was like, I don't know how to train myself in it. And so I was like, I don't have, 4 to 8 years, I'm trying to make it next year.
You're like a noob, basically.
Yeah. Oh, very much. Yeah. And so I felt like working with him up until, I hurt my knee. There was so much, I was so excited to, more than anything else, like see where I was at after putting in all that work and training a way that I had never trained before.
Yeah.
And so I think that was probably the toughest part, was just not getting to show up, regardless of how it was going to turn out. And I had been competitive going in, the prior season. So it was just, and that was unfortunate because I felt like I was finally getting some really solid work in, and I understood the trajectory and where I was going. And so that was just hard too, but more than anything, just not being able to know, to see it through, if anything.
Yeah,
so that was tough.
Well,
yeah.
But that seemed to have set you up for the next thing. So,
totally.
So let's see, swimming, CrossFit, bobsledding, and
seems appropriate. Data analytics.
Yeah. What's up with that?
Yeah. So
Did somebody approach you in secret and say, "Do you want to?" Data's pretty cool. You ever think about maybe becoming an analyst sometime?
No. So it was so interesting. So while I was competing in CrossFit, I was getting my master's in kinesiology because I figured I was going to go back into some form of maybe collegiate coaching again. And through that, kind of realized that I had more of a passion for the quantitative side of things. And I kind of was already geeking out in data for myself as far as just in training and whatnot.
Do you track all your workouts?
I do.
I do too. I have a spreadsheet with every workout I've ever done.
Oh, dude, that's awesome. Yeah. I really wanted to do something with all of the data, which I don't know what I would do, but
well, I track, and we get back to the analytics part in a bit, but it's like I always see where I have good runs and then where I kind of start messing up. Like climbing especially, I could track every climb I do, which is weird. And workouts as well, whatever it is. But it's like,
for sure.
What leads up to having a success? What leads up to maybe just completely flubbing at stuff, and you just shouldn't be doing it, today, right? So
totally.
And I always track like my squats. Like I have I'll show you, but it's funny because it's like number of reps, sets, weight used, and like total pounds per
nice.
time.
Yeah.
But it's interesting going back and comparing.
Right.
So what do you track?
So for me, I mean, when I was competing, I tracked every workout. I was also tracking all my food and stuff, which was, now I don't, but I was tracking it a ton. Now I really like tracking my sleep, which I'm not doing anything with it, but I just
you get
really
your
like.
Score?
Yeah. Oh, actually, I have an Oura ring, or they have a readiness score too. Yeah, they do. And I don't know why. I just love looking at that stuff. But yeah, I want to do something with. Yeah.
I feel like a lot of athletes are though. Like I think there's a stereotype, in the tech world, that athletes and jocks are stupid and a bunch of meatheads. These are some of the smartest people I know. Athletes and whatnot. Because I mean, you have to at a certain level. I guess nerd out on this stuff, right? Like, you can go throw weight around, but it's like, I don't know, or you can have like a program. And
for sure. If there's no rhyme or reason, and that's the thing too, in competitive sports, everyone's working hard.
Oh yeah.
So it's not enough just to work, like you said, push yourself, lift all the weight. First of all, there has to be a rhyme or a reason. Because, right, if you go in guns blazing every day, trying to max out all the time, you're not going to go very far.
I mean, I even remember the best programming I ever got was from Jake Hutton, who we talked about earlier. But when he was programming at the gym I was at, it was like squat progressions, for example. Like there was like 6-8 weeks.
Yeah.
You're just squatting and doing CrossFit workouts. So it's like your main lift is, and it's like everything is dialed. It's like, 1.25, up and down, and like tempo squats and like all this stuff. And like, this is brilliant programming.
Yeah.
Right. And the whole goal is that, have you, hopefully get a better 1RM at some point, but it's like, you just don't go throw weight around. Right?
No. Right.
So,
and that's with everything else, right? And now, especially like in any sport, it continues to get more and more competitive. So it's about your sleep. It's about the food you're eating. It's your recovery is a huge component.
Sleep and recovery is the one where I noticed that everyone's talking about that now. That didn't used to be a thing. Sleep. Now it's
like a recovery. And that's the thing. I mean, I think hindsight's 2020. We can all go, but there's so much. I just didn't know, growing up in sport, and that's the thing. It just wasn't talked about as much, especially the recovery piece. And now, and that's, I would say at every competition, that's the like invisible event, so to speak. It's like, if you're not recovering, you're not like a CrossFit event. You could be the fittest in the world, but if you don't have your recovery dialed in, by day 4, everyone's crushing you because you're not recovering well. And so, and I mean, I think that spans to general population as well. Like if you're not getting, sleep is at the bottom of the pyramid. And if you don't have that stuff dialed in, I mean, you can still make gains here and there, but if you unlock your sleep and recovery potential, you just unlock a whole new level of everything else. So, and it's cool that it's being talked about so much now.
For sure. Yeah. It is interesting. Part of me is wondering like how much of it is I don't know, companies like having apps.
Yeah, that's true.
Like, oh, you guys need to sleep more, but you couldn't track it without our app. Right.
It wasn't important then, but now it is.
So, that's awesome. But back to analytics. Okay, so you're a nerd. We got that out of the way. You're really competitive. Analytics, though, like how this was a career path. How did you get into that?
Yeah, so my sister-in-law is a data analyst.
Okay.
And so I'd heard about the field from her. My dad was an engineer by trade, and pretty much all my siblings were in some form of engineering, and I was kind of over in this island of, I'm just going to do fitness or something. But
I do kinesiology. Which is cool.
Yeah, no, for sure. But yeah, so I started asking her about it, and the field seemed super interesting to me. I had no experience though, and didn't know a ton about it. So I was like, well, I need a technical skill set. I need to go get some education in this field. So I started looking up, while I was still finishing up my master's, started looking up if there were any remote programs that I could hop into. And so I found one through ASU and started that. So was doing that while I was bobsledding.
Oh, interesting.
And then was taking some Coursera classes to get introduced to coding, which I honestly thought I was going to hate. Turns out I actually really like, which is interesting. Which is
it makes sense in retrospect, actually.
Yeah. And I think if anything, like I'm learning, it just like when I first walked into a CrossFit gym, a muscle up seemed so incredibly scary that the thought of even trying it, I was like, I'm going to feel stupid and I can't do this. And it was the same with coding. And then once you got to make the first step, however small it is. And,
that's
you don't just figure it out all in one day. And like you said, it comes with smart programming and all that stuff. So, so I started doing that and then decided that that's what I wanted to make a career out of. And so I was planning on, finishing up the bobsled season with however that would have ended up. And while I was, laying in bed after surgery, I was like, well, I can start applying for jobs. Like there's no, if anything, I'll just get some practice. And ended up getting started my first role, in the fall of 21. And just
nice.
Been learning, kind of drinking from a fire hose ever since, but it's been awesome.
That's awesome. What are your favorite aspects of data analytics?
Oh man, like we were talking about earlier, I love that no day really is the same. I feel like every day is super different in what I'm going to get asked, what I'm going to get to learn, which is really cool. I also really enjoy, I think it like every company needs it, right? And it's just the field is growing so much. And I also love the people that I've gotten to work with. I also think, not that I know I have kind of a weird path into it, but I feel like everyone I've met has a really interesting path into their current data role. And so that's been really cool. And I feel like it's just been really interesting and awesome to learn from so many just incredible people.
Right. Yeah. It's all about the good team too. Back to
absolutely.
Team dynamics, over and over.
Exactly.
Right? It's like, that's everything. And that's how you learn on the job. Or if you're with a bad team, I've been in those situations too. And it
for
sucks,
sure.
but I've been with great teams and it makes all the difference in the world, So, it's really cool. Yeah. And I think being an athlete too, I don't know about you. I used to climb a ton. I guess maybe it would have been considered pro back in the day, but I was a dirtbag climbing. But it's like, but I still know like some of the characteristics of stuff, like knowing how to learn and knowing how to pick things up and like, knowing how to focus on things. Like, what do you think in analytics was like maybe both the easiest, and then we can talk about the hardest things for you to pick up, right? So like, what was easy for you to pick up?
I think just working hard and not being afraid of not knowing something initially, like not being afraid to ask or receive feedback. I think that's something that really helped. That there are so many skills that I didn't know were going to transfer over from athletics into data. And I think being coachable is one of them, where,
that's a big one.
And especially, and I think maybe because I'm still, I would say, very new. I have zero ego around it. I'm like, please give me feedback. Tell me if something's wrong.
To have,
like,
though.
Yeah. So I think that's been, and I've been, and I think my first manager going into data, I can't thank him enough because he really saw, because it's hard to, I think, on a resume, put some of those intangible characteristics into, words on, be like, hey, I work hard and like I've done athletics. So this is going to transfer over. It's like, but I think he really knew that, hey, maybe your technical skill set isn't where we would want it to be right now, but I've no question that you're going to work super hard. And and that I did. So I think that's been, So I think just being coachable, trying to soak everything up as much as I can.
No, I totally get it. Like some of my favorite people are like athletes, military is the other one, especially if they're like, come from like a special ops background. So to get there, you have to be somewhat crazy, one, and then two, you have a good work ethic because you have to. Yeah, right? They ain't gonna select somebody to put through that training that's like gonna just mess around. So, but yeah, professional athletes or college athletes. I mean, if I see that on a resume, I'm like, okay, they know how to work, right? You're not gonna get on a team, right? Being lazy, and uncoachable, right? Yeah. So that's a big piece. Totally. What was the hardest thing for you to pick up? Or what's been the hardest thing so far? I mean, I would just say continuing to kind of, not that I feel like I have to backtrack per se, but because I don't have, I didn't take a ton of stats and math courses, in undergrad because I didn't know I was going to be doing this. And so kind of having to more or less, which I think you have to do either way, learn as you go. But I think just kind of playing catch up a little bit with some of the more technical side of things. But I think so much of that and having that mindset of like having that stats mindset and stuff. But I've also been really lucky, like you said, to have a really good team that's their strengths. So I've been able to learn a lot from them and how to actually apply it in real life scenarios. Yeah. So, but I would say that was definitely the toughest at first. And just initially, just being scared of coding and stuff, as silly as it sounds, it was so intimidating to me at first. But I think, again, this might sound silly, but, throughout high school and college, I had a really hard time balancing academics and athletics. And I had kind of convinced myself that I was just really bad at school and learning in that area. And I think going into getting my master's and going into this new field, if anything, it's given me a new confidence that I didn't have before, and realizing that it's not, my work ethic and that isn't just confined to sports. I can use it elsewhere. And coding didn't come as easy to me as, lifting a barbell or something like that, but I still had to work at that. And there was a day that I couldn't do half the things I can do in the gym, but it takes time. And I think it's just about also seeing long-term and not just giving up after, a few times that you fail. That's what I see a lot of people when they get into the field, whether it's tech or data, they think they want quick wins. Yeah. Kind of like in sports. I'm sure you see this when you coach, right? So it's like, I can't, squat like, 500 pounds, like in a week. Like, okay, it's fine. This is stupid.
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah. It's hard. What I guess over the next year for analytics, like what are you stoked to learn then?
Oh man, I feel like there's so
like
much.
A million things.
There
are, but
yeah, no, definitely. I would say I definitely right now would like to continue to grow my coding skill set and just be better at that. You and I have talked about, taking some stats classes just to keep growing that muscle, so to speak. Would definitely love to kind of dip my toes into some machine learning type stuff. But I think right now, like to your point of trying not to get ahead of myself, but just being the best data analyst I can possibly be.
That was the advice I gave you. Yeah. Was just, and for the audience, I'm mentoring Colleen now.
Yes.
So she's going to be coaching me, so it's a good trade here. But no, I think because there's the thing you don't want to be is mediocre, right?
Right.
You want to, or if you're mediocre, you are. You try to be really good at it. Yeah. Like for me in like running, for example, like no matter how hard I try, I'll be an average runner. It doesn't matter how much effort I put into it. Yeah. I will be. I'm not. The other day I saw my friend Jared Campbell, who is like one of the best trail runners on the planet.
Oh, geez. Yeah.
So I'm just like running up this thing, and he's like running down. It's like, and I'm like, hey. So I won't be him, right?
Yeah.
He's like he won like the Berkley Marathon like twice.
Wow.
The nasty one, and it's like. So there's people like that. I know, I had a running coach, right? But I just know like the bounds. I will be average at best. That's fine. But you got to push yourself to know these things. And the same with like learning a skill, any skill. Like you have to put in the effort. Yeah. And you'll know if you're good or not. And there's nothing wrong with being mediocre, but you'll find the things that you want to be excellent at. But you have to put in the time to know, okay, so put in the time. I'm an awesome analyst. as awesome as I need to be for the job at hand. I don't know
Right.
what the most awesome analyst in the world looks like. That'd be interesting. I don't know that person.
Yeah.
If you are the most awesome analyst in the world, please reach out to me.
Right.
And we can get you on the podcast. It's with programming, it's interesting, right? I think there's a notion of like a 10x developer or a 1000x developer, and I think that's maybe a bit more tangible in some sense, because it's like, how quickly can you ship features that matter? Maybe for an analyst, I guess maybe it's, how can you move the needle for your business?
Yeah,
is maybe how I'd probably measure an awesome analyst. But there's so many components that go into that, right?
Right.
So the domain expertise part of being an analyst, which I think is actually more important in a lot of ways than having the technical chops.
For sure.
I think the technical chops are the table stakes. You got to have that stuff, but being able to translate that into solving business problems,
very true.
Is more, I think, the value out of an analyst, and the role of an analyst is changing too, right? So I think an analyst that's answering like what or when type questions, like descriptive stuff, like that's gonna probably go away, or at least change. But like being able to dive in and answer stuff like why and how and help drive the business, like that's, I think, where the the role is going. But that also means like, then there's all the business stuff you got to learn now. It's like, okay, so how do I move the needle on a business? How do I think about competitive strategy and all this other stuff that like they don't teach you at analytics school typically? But this is
right.
In fact, I advise the University of Utah's programs, and we were meeting the other week, and I was like, the things I wish you would, it wasn't me just saying this either, there was a couple other people, but like the business stuff, learn to interface with the business. Like I wish you would teach more of that, because that's key. Like get requirements, understand stakeholders, and what do they want, and so forth. So I'd say that's for the audience, it's something you should think about. And for Colleen, that's the yin to the yang, right? It's like all the technical stuff, the coding, stats. It's like you got to learn that. That's for sure. But then there's the whole other universe of
absolutely
everything, and it's
Oh yeah. Well, and I think to your point, I think that's another one of the reasons why I love it so much is the problem solving piece.
Yeah.
And getting to have those relationships with stakeholders and figure out like, okay, how are we going to make our product better to help our customers? And like really helping people, I also think is another thing that I love about it. Cool. And like getting to talk to our customers, or our customers coming in and being like, wow, like we're really making a difference. And I think that's really cool. So every day trying to, like you said, move the needle a little bit. And I think it's really cool. Yeah. When you see all of that work that you and your team have done to like, for that decision that ends up like making a really big difference, you're like, wow, like that's incredibly rewarding. And not that that happens like every day, but every day, just changing the world.
Making miracles. It's great. Yeah.
But I think I really appreciated that bit of advice about really focusing on, what I'm doing now. Cause I think it's so easy, especially since there's so many parts of the business in the field. It's really easy to get distracted and want to do a million things at a time. But just like in fitness, like you said, if your goal is to, squat really heavy and then also work on your gymnastics and all these other things, you're not going to do 10 things all at once, right? You're going to tackle it one piece at a time. And so I really appreciated that, because it kind of brings me back to earth a little bit.
Well, it's easy though to get distracted, right? I mean, you could go learn, data engineering. Here I'm
right.
holding up the book. You could learn that, but I think it's in due time. Maybe you do, right? Yeah. Maybe spend the 20% time, quote unquote, for learning new stuff and keeping on top of it. Like the way I learn is like, on my iPad, I just queue up articles, I read them on the weekend. There's probably 50 of them. Just go through them, see what's up in the world. Read a lot of books, learn the fundamentals. I think I gave you Ed Tuff's book on visualization. That one's fantastic.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Like, read the classics in the field. That's like a big one. But just I think the cool thing with you is you have humility and like you're eminently coachable, which is like amazing. Some people, it's like I do a lot of mentoring. I used to do a lot of mentoring. I don't do that much mentoring anymore. But I only take on certain people.
Well, I feel very special. Thank you.
But some people, I think they want to try and do everything at once, right? It's like, well, why can't I learn, I don't know, just any number of things, like machine learning on top of, visualizations on top of whatever, right? All at the same time. I'm like, you got to build a foundations. And especially, if you're coming into it, like with math, for example, right? Like math is very foundational. If that's what you're trying to brush up on or review, it's like, you got to start from like basically, your lowest point and build from there. And your lowest point is whatever, is a maximum knowledge you have of math. But it's like, if you skip steps, it's not going to do you any good.
Right.
You can jump straight into learning complex stuff. But machine learning, I see this a lot. People want to learn machine learning, and there's gurus out there like, oh, you don't need to know math for machine learning. It's like, that's pretty bad advice. Like, I think you got to get the building blocks at some point, right? But I'm excited for your journey.
Thank you.
I think you got everything in, to become an awesome, I think minimally an awesome data analyst. But I think you're gonna just rock it. In the data and probably business world too.
Thank you.
Yeah. It's you got the ingredients.
Thanks.
So for the audience out there, what are the ingredients?
Yeah.
Well, like I said, coachability, tenacity, and and I think a sense of humility, right? Like, that's how you learn. So, and keep going every day, because you're going to burn yourself out otherwise.
For sure.
Yeah.
I think that was definitely, I had many talks with, my brother. I'm the oldest of 6 kids. And so I'm super tight with my siblings, and they have just been really supportive and awesome throughout everything. Same with my parents. And I remember when I first got started in data analytics, chatting with my brother, and I was definitely treating it as a sprint, not a marathon.
Yeah.
And he was like, you gotta slow your roll a little bit. It's easy to want to, it's the,
Okay, hi.
Oh, hello.
My dog can open doors for the audience, where she tries.
She's very talented.
She's very talented. Maybe you can go do it in the CrossFit Games there.
Yeah, there you go. But yeah, so I think that's also great advice, is just that, again, not going to all happen in a day or a week.
Oh, it won't. There's a progression out there, right? Yeah. But you know how this works. I mean, again, you're very accomplished in, 3 different sports like that. You don't get there by sheer luck. You might get there with one, but even then, it's like to, did you say you did almost qualify at the Olympics for swimming too, or?
I went to Olympic trials.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, to even get to that point, like that's not a fluke. So it's like, I just sort of stumbled into, the Olympic trials. Right. That doesn't really happen. So. Yeah. So that's really cool. Well, awesome. Well, it's been a fun chat.
Yeah, thank you.
Looking forward to mentoring you, and so yeah, it's gonna be a lot of fun. And thanks for stopping by.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Anytime.